What's up, Facebook? It's your boy, Mike the Mentor, coming fresh from the daddy-daughter dance with my daughter. Show you a little picture here. We were getting crazy out there on the dance floor. This was by far the most fun daddy-daughter dance that we've had to date, because my daughter, instead of running around with her friends and playing tag and all the crazy madness that happens at the daddy-daughter dances, she actually wanted to dance with me. And even though I got two left feet, we danced a lot and we had a lot of fun. It was a good evening. So here is a little picture to share with you guys from the daddy-daughter dance. My daughter, the only daughter whose feet grow like mine did at that age, so she has no dress shoes. So she just wore her Jordans, like, just taking after her mom, because that's what her mom would do. Forget the dress shoes. I'm gonna wear Jordans to the daddy-daughter dance, or to my wedding, or wherever else I feel like rocking them. So she takes after her mom. That's definitely a good thing. All right, so there's that. It's Friday, right? Man Up Friday. Man, we are just getting into some good stuff here. Tonight we're going to talk more about the father wound and how we face that. So I want to encourage you, break out your phone, break out a pen and a paper, so you can take some notes, right? Because this is part of how you change your life. This is how you change your son's life. This is how you change your family's life. I believe that God is going to hit you with something tonight, give you some sort of revelation into an area in your life. And you can't rely on your mind to just remember it, right? You want to write it down so you can come back to it, so you can meditate on it, so you can think about it, and discover how you're going to apply these truths to your life, because you don't know what you don't know. And this stuff has really changed my life. And before I saw this material for the first time, I didn't know any of these things, right? If you're new to this page, just kind of bring you up to speed in 30 seconds. Let's test this out. So I had a crazy life growing up. I had a lot of obstacles. Dad in and out of prison. Brother committed suicide. Dad died. Struggles with my mom. Just not having a father in my life. All types of crazy stuff that most people never even deal with through their entire life. So now that I'm older, I look back on my life and I ask the question, why can someone go through all this crazy stuff and come out on the other side and make something of their lives, have a family of their own, hold down a good job, be the first person in their family to graduate from college, right? I'm changing my family tree by doing the things that I'm doing. And I recognized that there were two huge things in my life that made a difference. The first one was the grace of God, right? Because without God, I wouldn't be here today, and I wouldn't have any hope to push on through a lot of these hard times. The second thing is I had mentors in my life, whether they were on paper in books, because I was an avid reader growing up, because I was wanting to know how other people changed their lives, because if they could do it, then I could do it. And I know that if I can do it and they could do it, you can do it. The second thing was I had mentors in my life, ones that I actively sought out, and ones that God brought into my life, men that refused to let me settle for less, that called me out on my BS, that held me to a higher standard, right? That helped me answer the higher calling that I have on my life as a husband, as a father, as an employee, as a member of my community. And now I want to take all that stuff that's been invested into me over all these years, and I want to give that back to other guys, because it's crazy out there what's going on in our world. And that's a result of men not stepping up and advocating the throne that was given to them, right? The place that they have in society, in their relationship, in their marriage, in their family, and they've ran away from it for a multitude of reasons, which we've gone over in some of the past videos. So I encourage you to check those out, right? So where all this stuff comes from that I talk about on Friday nights, is this course, The Quest for Authentic Manhood by Robert M. Lewis. This isn't my stuff. I wasn't given this fresh revelation, but it changed my life so much that I want to share it with you. So all credit goes to Robert M. Lewis. This is his material, and it's profound and it's life-changing. And if you have an open mind as we go through this, I know that it'll make a difference in your life, especially if you take this stuff and you don't just know it, right? You take it from here and you put it in here, and then you apply it to your life and you walk it out. You'll begin to see enormous change in your life, in your family, wherever you're at. So I'll share my screen. We'll jump into it and get ready because it's some good stuff. All right, where are we going here? We are going. Here we go. All right, I call this facing. Well, I don't call this. Robert Lewis calls this facing the father wound. But yeah, so here's a picture of me, my dad there in the middle, my sister down there on the left, and then my brother underneath. And this was from my graduation of high school in 1999. My dad had been on the lam, I guess is what you would call it. He was a ghost. Didn't know really where he was at for the prior 3 years through an incident. You know, when we were 15, he left, and that hurt. But he called me one day and said he was coming to my graduation. I didn't want to believe him. I mean, I verbally I gave him the benefit of the doubt, but inside I didn't want to believe him, and I didn't think he would show up, right? Because he wasn't known for keeping his word. But here he is. He showed up, you know, and I had mixed emotions. I was grateful, but at the same time, I was distant because even though he promised that he would stick around, I knew better than that, right? I knew that I wasn't going to give him the benefit of the doubt unless he actually showed it to me. And unfortunately, he didn't. He went back into the wind, and we'll get more into that on the Sunday sermon. On Sundays, I share things from my life and what I went through and how they've affected me. But that's not tonight. So facing the father wound, right? So we're going to do a quick summary of what we've been through in the last, I want to say, 4 weeks with these sessions. Or maybe this is week 5. But here we go, right? What we're doing is we're learning to make sense of why we are the way we are. Like, there's a reason. We don't just operate the way we do today for no reason at all. We're not just on autopilot, right? Like, we've had these things that have conditioned us and have programmed us from our childhood that make us who we are today and affect the majority of choices that we make, especially when the pressure's on, right? Like, we revert to what is at our core. And the only way to change what has affected you at your core is to look back on it and to deconstruct it and to face it and bring it to the light, right? So that you can get over it and you can get freedom in those areas of your life, and then you can begin to plan on how to move forward. 1, every man has a story to tell. I don't care who you are. We all have a story to tell about our dads in some way or another. Maybe he was absent. Maybe he was manipulative. Maybe he was a smooth talker. Maybe he was physically present, but emotionally he was distant. We all have a story to tell. And every man to some degree is a product of their past. You know, I just said that, right? Our past affects who we are today. For some men, it has control over their lives. For other men, there's still some residue there that may not have control over their lives, but is affecting them in some way. Maybe it's affecting them in their marriage and how they treat their spouse, right? Maybe it's affecting them at their place of work and how they treat those around them. And I'll just give you two quick examples, right? So maybe you grew up in a household and in an environment where women weren't treated with honor. They were treated as objects, and it was commonplace to make crude jokes about women, and the term locker room talk comes to mind, right? To talk about women like that. And then now that you're married, you carry those same habits into your marriage, so that when you're around other guys, even if it's in front of your spouse or in front of those other family members that talk that way, you accept that, right? Even inside, maybe you don't agree with it, you let it happen, and you don't defend your wife's honor in front of those people who are making those crass and inappropriate jokes. Another example could be, maybe you grew up in a home that was where you were abandoned, right? Like there's abandonment where your dad was there and he left. And now you find yourself in your marriage, like I did, right? And you became a people pleaser. You pleased everybody around you because you thought that if you gave everyone else around you what they wanted, they would have no reason to ever leave you. Well, that's not true, because God gave people free will. They can come and go as they wish. It doesn't matter how good you are to them. That doesn't mean that you should be nasty to them, but you can't control other people. And I had a big breakthrough in my life when I was able to connect the dots between my past and my abandonment, and how I was acting out my life in my life and in my marriage, right? So those are two quick examples for you. The third one is, every man in some way is controlled by their past until we consciously and willfully choose to break that control. And I underline consciously and willfully choose, because we have a choice, right? We're not in a jail cell where there's four walls around us and we're locked. At points in our life, it seems like we're in a jail cell and we can't get free. But the reality of it is that the door to that jail cell is wide open, and we just haven't recognized it for a multitude of reasons. But at any time, we have the choice, once we recognize we have the choice, to walk free and to walk out of that jail cell, right? And we have a choice to not let our past dictate one more second of our future. So we just have to consciously and willfully choose to make that decision and break free from that. The second thing is, or the second, I guess, main point is, right, we're exploring the first of 5 major wounds in life that shape us. The father wound. And it's a huge wound. And this wound is being inflicted upon sons at epidemic levels today. We've talked about some of the statistics, right, of fatherless homes, of men in prison, and the majority of them coming from fatherless homes, right? The suicide rates and how those are affected by growing up in a fatherless home, how poverty is affected by growing up in a fatherless home. Every major issue in society can trace its roots back to, in some way or another, to your home and what that home environment was like, and if a father was in that home alongside of a mother. All the statistics show that. All the studies show that. So, I mean, the correlation is crazy. And the reason the world is so crazy right now is because, generation after generation has slowly gotten away from that core, right, of having a father be in their home, because men have more slowly and slowly walked away from that responsibility for a multitude of reasons, as we've discussed in the past. No need to hash them here. So the question for tonight, right, that we're going to look at is, what will you give your son? And I was thinking about this earlier. Maybe a better question is when you die, and granted you die before your kids die, what are they going to say about you at your funeral? How are they going to remember you, right? Are they going to remember you as being physically present but mentally and emotionally absent? Are they going to tell stories about the things that you instilled in them and showed them? Or are they going to remember you as being verbally abusive, as a drunk, as physically abusive, as strict and not having any fun? I don't know. It's just a question, right? How are you? How are they going to remember you? Because if we start with the future in mind, we can work backwards uh, and deconstruct what we need to do now to affect that future. I know that when I die, and this wasn't the case before I heard this, right? Before I went through this course, which totally changed my outlook. I had a pretty good idea, right? Because I didn't want my kids to grow up without a father like I did. But that was it. It stopped there. I didn't go any deeper than that. I didn't. I was conscious of what I wanted, but there wasn't any intentionality behind me getting to that place. I was just gonna wing it. So, what will you give your son? So, there's a couple things, two main points here. The first one is there's some things that you need to make sure that your son hears on a frequent basis, right? Your son needs to hear, "I love you." Right? He needs to have that affection expressed to him, right? And that won't make him a sissy. It won't make him weak. Whatever term you want to put on that, right? Like there's something powerful about one man looking another man in the eyes, or your son in the eyes, and saying, "I love you," with sincerity, and not being ashamed of that, right? And not being afraid to put your arms around your son and tell him that, right? So that he can be confident in who he is, and you can reflect. Really, it's a model, right, of God's love for us, right? Because God says he loves us and he wants to show us. And as fathers, we're supposed to take our relationship with our son, and that's supposed to be a reflection of God's relationship with us. And our job as fathers is to do whatever we can to point our kids towards a real relationship with God. And one way of doing that is reminding them of that we love them and verbalizing that. The second thing that your son needs to hear is he needs to hear, "I'm proud of you," right? He needs that admiration. I tell the story of when I was in 8th grade and I was the worst kid on the basketball team, and we played this team, and somehow my dad was there, the only game he's ever seen me play, and I get in the last 5 minutes of the game, and it's scrub time, but I'm going to make my dad proud, right? And I'm diving on the floor after every loose ball, even if I can't get it. I'm, trying to grab every single rebound. I'm running down the court as fast as I can. I'm like half Michael Jordan, half Tasmanian Devil out there. And, even though we lost the game, after the game, we're walking to the bus, and I'm crying and I'm emotional. And my dad comes up next to me, and he puts his arm around me, and he says, "Why are you crying? It's just the game," right? Like that was a moment in my life. That was a moment for my dad where it could have went a totally different way. He could have put his arm around me and said, "Son, I'm so proud of you. You never gave up. You tried your hardest. You did everything that you could in your control to win the basketball game. I'm proud of you." But for whatever reason, he didn't recognize that moment. And that moment had a profound effect on me. And you're going to have moments with your kids, some that you're going to get right and some that you're going to mess up. So I just want to encourage you, slow down and be able to recognize those moments where you can tell your son, "I'm proud of you." The third thing a son needs to hear is, "You're good at," right? And how this has affected me personally in my life is I can't think of a time with my dad ever the few times that he was in my life and we talked, that he ever affirmed me. And my life, there hasn't been always a clear direction of what I would do. Like even at school, even after school, right? My direction came from just what I wanted, which was to play basketball for as long as humanly possible. But when that was done, it was like, what's next? What am I good at? What do I do? And now, I'm 20 something years old and I'm having to take stock of my life and really figure out, like what direction should I move? What are my skills? Whereas if we can talk to our kids and our sons when they're younger and affirm in them what they're good at, I think down the road, as they're planning their life out, as they're making those decisions, they'll have those things to fall back on, because they'll remember, yeah, Dad said I was good at this. Dad said I was good at that. There's got to be something to that. I should pursue something along those lines further, right? So part of that affirmation is you want to notice your son's strengths. And not only do you want to notice them, you want to call them out. You want to name them, right? So there will be no second guessing. There will be no question as to what you see in him, because we all have these gifts inside of us that God has given us, right? And they start out as little seeds, and they need to be watered, and they need to be nurtured, and they need to be pulled out of us, right? And it takes a good man to come alongside another man and speak that life, water those seeds, pull those things out. And that's what we're doing for our sons. So notice his strengths and name them. Then the second thing, or the second major point in tonight's lesson, is there's some things that you need to make sure your son has, right? Because one day he's going to leave the house. My son's probably a year, maybe 2 years away from that. Definitely within 5 years. I mean, he's a junior. So he's got some major life changes coming up here in the next couple of years, and I'm really trying to be intentional and thinking about how I can best prepare him for those changes, right? Adulthood, that responsibility that comes out of it. So here's what we want to make sure that he has. We want to make sure that he has a manhood vision and a manhood ceremony, right? Like, first of all, manhood vision. He's not going to have a clear vision of manhood. He's not going to come up with that on his own. It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. It's not default. It's not something that's learned. It's something that's taught, right? So what vision are you going to give your son for manhood? What's the higher calling on his life going to be that you're going to say, all right, son, like, this is what it means to be a man. These are the standards. And we don't fall below the standards. And if we happen to fall below the standards, this is what we do to get back up to where those standards are, right? Your son needs to have those, hands down. And then, on top of that, he needs to have a manhood ceremony, which we've talked about in the past, and we'll continue to go through, especially on Tuesday, on Tuesday Thoughts, when we're going to flesh this out. There needs to be a ceremony to welcome him in to manhood, because only men can bestow manhood. Only one man can bestow manhood on another man, or only a group of men can bestow manhood on another man, right? There's certain things about being a man that only men understand. Women don't understand those things, just like there's certain things about women, or about being a woman, that only women understand, and that they can only pass on to their daughters. Men can't give them that, right? So it goes both ways. So we need to be purposeful in having a manhood ceremony for our son, especially here in the West, right? Other cultures, they do a good job of welcoming men into manhood, right? So that there's a clear, distinctive line that's been crossed that says, you are not a man. You are now a man. In America, we don't have any idea when that is. Is it when I drink my first beer? Is it when I smoke my first cigarette? Is it when I sleep with a woman? Is it when I turn 18? Is it when I turn 21? Is it when I buy my first house? Like, what's the line? And what does that look like? Right? So do you want your son to, you know, come of age and figure that out for himself? Or do you want to set him up for success and teach him what those things are and what they look like, and then have a ceremony that's memorable, that he'll never forget, that'll solidify those things inside his mind and his heart? The second thing you want to make sure that your son has is a code of conduct, right? So I've shared this before in my past, and I don't share these things. I hope I never sound like I'm bragging. Like, that's the last thing I want to do. I just want to share these examples because that's how I learn, right? Like, I'm visual, and I learn from seeing what other people have done. So I want to be able to share with you guys as many examples from my own life as possible, so that you can learn from the things that I've done right, and you can learn from the things that I've done wrong. In no way, shape, or form am I ever trying to brag. I'm just trying to help you guys out, because that's what this is all about. Is just helping other men out, because I care. I care about my brothers. I don't care about being famous. I don't care about being notorious. I don't care about trying to make money from this. I do it for free, and I give my time because I really care about guys and the things that they have to deal with on a daily basis. And it just breaks my heart when I see guys giving up, when I see guys walking away from their families, walking away from their marriages, wanting to give up on life. It just breaks my heart. And I've been quiet and sat on the sidelines and watched, and haven't spoken up or done anything prior to this, and I'm done with that. I will go to my grave knowing that I tried to help as many guys as possible better their lives and better their families' lives. So make sure your son has a code of conduct to live by. What is your family code of conduct, right? What does that look like? What do you as a man in your family, and what does your family stand for? Do you stand for God? Do you stand for honor? Do you stand for respect? Do you stand for wisdom? Do you stand for doing right, integrity? Do you stand for helping those who can't be helped? Do you stand for giving to others? I mean, what are these things, right? Like, what is your family going to be about? What is your legacy as a man going to be about? What seeds are you going to purposely plant in your son? Don't just think about them. Take a couple minutes, write them down, and then have a family meeting and share them with your family. Let me back up. First, after you think about it and you write it down, share it with your wife. Get your wife's input, then call a family meeting, then share it with your family. Right? So the whole family can be on the same page as to what you guys stand for and what is to be expected out of the men in your family and what is to be expected out of the women in your family. And I'm not talking about chores. I'm not talking about daily tasks or household tasks. I'm talking about the way you live your life, the things that you will die for, right? Those underlying characteristics that are going to make you and your family who you are. The third thing is you want to make sure your son has a transcendent cause, something to live for other than himself, right? Because life is not about ourselves. I think it's crazy that no, I'm not going to go there. But I think it's crazy that, like, we have these things called selfies, right? Where we just take pictures of ourselves and of our lives and we post them online. And I'm not saying anything is wrong with that, but I just find it ironic that, one, it's called a selfie, and two, we're making it about ourselves and putting it out there. Like, what does that say about us as a whole, as a society? What are we living for, right? So I don't want to get off topic in a rabbit's trail, but what will you instill in your son, and what will you help them? What cause will you help them have that's bigger than themselves? Will it be your faith, right? Will it be a purpose, to serve others that are less fortunate? Maybe you you like to help the homeless people, so that's something that you want to instill in your son, right? That we help homeless people, that we help others that aren't able to necessarily help themselves. And what does that look like? Maybe you're really passionate about children, and children who don't have homes, right? And you do stuff with orphanages or boys clubs. you know that's the point, like, right? Like, what are you going to show your son? Are you going to show them that life is all about you and what you want, right? And when you don't get what you want, you go and you get it somewhere else, right? And this is bigger than just the moment, because this is exactly how it plays out every day in marriages all across the country, right? Is one person gets to a point where they're fed up, and they say, you know what, I'm going to be selfish. Now it's about me and what I want and what's going to make me happy. And I'm not passing blame on anybody who's been through that, uh, because that's not an easy thing. I'm just sharing from my experience in the men that I've known and the men that I've talked to, right, that all want to go down that road. It's about, right, uh, it's about not accepting the headship that you've been given in your house. And we talked about what headship is and what that looks like, and how that means sometimes you take the hits, you draw the fire. You don't get to have your way, right? It's about your wife and about your children. And when we get selfish, we draw away from that. And then we leave our wives, and then we end up leaving our kids. And we're not focused on something that's bigger than ourselves. It's about what we want. So I'll get off my high horse there. Sorry. I just get fired up about that, right? Because that's what I'm passionate about, is men, and helping men be the best fathers, the best husbands, the best members of society that they can be. And I believe that the only way that they can do that is to be with their family, and to be with their wife, and to be with that relationship. And when those things are broken, it leaves behind a lot of brokenness and woundedness in their kids and in their kids' lives, so that when they grow up, more than likely, things won't get better. Things will get worse, because your kids will then pass that on to their kids, unless they never face it and learn to deal with it. So that's part of what all this is about. I'm going down a rabbit trail, so it's time to ring it back in. But that's it for tonight, right? Make sure your son hears these things. Make sure your son has these things. Be intentional about it. Hope you were taking notes. If you weren't, write these things down and give it some time. Get 10, 15, 20 minutes of alone time where you can go through these things. If you're a believer, ask God to show you these things. Ask God to reveal these things to you, and He will make these things known, so that you can better lead your family. You can better show your son what real manhood looks like. How you're supposed to live, and what that transcendent cause looks like. So tomorrow, Shout Out Saturday, where I just celebrate, somebody who's had a profound impact on my life, and just giving them praise for that. And then on Sunday, we have My Life Sunday, where I'm going to be talking more about my dad, and some of the decisions that he made. Last week, talked about my brother committing suicide, and the effect that had on my life at that time. And this kind of brings the next point, or the next little chapter in my life, right? Like, what do I do about that? Like, how do I get over that? Like, a little bit about the depression I faced, but then also, dealing with my dad and some unbroken promises, and how that all played out. So I love you guys. I hope you enjoyed tonight. If you know another brother that needs this type of encouragement, right? Because that's ultimately what this is meant to be, is encouragement. Please share this video with them. And I appreciate you guys liking this video. I appreciate all the comments you guys leave, the questions you ask. I do my best to get to those in a timely manner. But once again, I love you guys. I hope that you're taking this stuff seriously. And I know that by watching this, you do take it seriously. But don't just leave it at that, right? Put some action behind the stuff that we're going over. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Have a good night.